At 62, my uncle was ready to do something he had been waiting decades to do: retire. He had worked most of his adult life, paid Social Security taxes from every paycheck, and finally believed he understood how retirement was going to work. Then one morning, he looked at his Social Security estimate and made a decision. He filed it felt like the responsible thing to do: get the money, stop working, enjoy retirement. But there was one problem. He had no idea that the decision he made that morning could affect thousands of dollars over the years. And the strange part is, he wasn't doing anything obviously wrong. He was doing what millions of Americans do. He was looking at one number and ignoring the system behind it. Because Social Security isn't simply about how much you paid in, it's about your earnings history when you claim your family situation, and sometimes even benefits you didn't realize you could qualify for. And some Americans may be leaving money behind without ever knowing it. My uncle's first mistake was simple. He thought 62 meant, I'm eligible, so I should take it. And technically, retirement benefits can begin at 62 if you meet the work requirements. But eligible doesn't automatically mean optimal. For people born in 1960 or later, full retirement age is 67. Claiming before full retirement age can permanently reduce your monthly benefit, and waiting longer can increase it up to age 70. That means two people with almost identical work histories can end up receiving very different monthly checks simply because they made different claiming decisions. But here's where the story gets more interesting. My uncle wasn't the only person in my family who misunderstood Social Security. My father had a completely different problem. He had spent years working, changing jobs, earning more as his career progressed. He assumed Social Security would automatically have every number correct. Why wouldn't it? After all, the government had been collecting the taxes. But Social Security calculates retirement benefits using your earnings record, and if that record contains an error, the mistake can follow you into retirement. That's why checking your earnings history isn't just paperwork. It can be worth real money. Imagine discovering that 1 year of earnings wasn't recorded correctly, or that an old employer's information doesn't match what you actually earned. You might never notice it while you're working, but decades later, when you're calculating a retirement benefit that could last for the rest of your life, that missing information suddenly matters. And there's something else my father didn't understand. Social Security isn't only about your own work record. There are family benefits, spousal benefits, survivor benefits, and in some circumstances, benefits connected to a former spouse. That means your Social Security strategy isn't always just, how much did I earn? Sometimes the better question is, what benefits does my entire family qualify for? That's where a lot of people stop looking, and that's exactly where thousands of dollars can potentially be left behind. Because imagine a woman who spent years raising children and working part-time. Her own earnings record might produce a relatively small retirement benefit. She assumes that's the end of the story. But depending on her circumstances, she may also need to understand whether spousal or other family benefits could apply. The rules are complicated, and that's the problem. People often make permanent financial decisions based on a system they barely understand. But there is an even bigger category of benefits that many people don't think about until tragedy happens. Survivor benefits. And for one family, that can completely change the retirement math. Because sometimes the person who spent their entire life thinking about their own Social Security is actually protecting someone else's retirement income. And that's where this story gets much more serious. Imagine my grandfather had been the higher earner in his marriage. For decades, he worked. My grandmother depended heavily on the household income. Then one day, everything changed. My grandfather died, and suddenly, this wasn't a retirement planning question anymore. It was a survival question. This is one of the reasons Social Security has survivor benefits. A surviving spouse may qualify for benefits based on a deceased spouse's work record, depending on factors including age and circumstances. And in some situations, even a divorced former spouse may qualify for survivor benefits. That's something many people don't know. The Social Security Administration says a surviving divorced spouse may qualify in certain circumstances if the marriage lasted at least 10 years and other requirements are met. So imagine spending years divorced from someone and assuming that their Social Security record has nothing to do with your retirement. That assumption could be expensive, but survivor benefits come with their own timing rules. The amount can depend heavily on when the survivor claims. According to Social Security, survivor benefits can range from 71.5% to as much as 100% of the deceased spouse's benefit, depending on when the survivor applies. That means the timing decision isn't just a technical detail, it can affect the amount of money coming into a household every month. And here's the uncomfortable part. Most people don't learn these rules when they're calm and planning. They learn them when someone has died. They're sitting at a kitchen table surrounded by paperwork. They're trying to understand bills. They're grieving, and someone suddenly tells them, "You need to contact Social Security." That's a terrible time to discover that you never understood the rules. But survivor benefits aren't the only place people can miss something. There's another mistake that happens much earlier. People claim because they need the money today, without asking what that decision does to the next 20 or 30 years. My uncle was thinking about the first check. He wasn't thinking about the 100th check. That's a psychological problem. Humans are naturally attracted to immediate rewards. A check arriving next month feels real. A larger check years from now feels abstract. So when someone reaches 62, the question becomes, why wait? But waiting isn't automatically right either. That's important. There is no universal claiming age that is perfect for everyone. Health, finances, marital status, employment, longevity, taxes, and other factors can all matter. The point isn't that everyone should wait until 70. The point is that claiming at 62 shouldn't be an automatic decision simply because 62 is the first age available. And then there's another trap. You can be working while receiving Social Security, but if you're below full retirement age and your earnings exceed the applicable limit, some benefits can be withheld. For 2026, the earnings limit for someone below full retirement age is $24,480. That doesn't necessarily mean the money disappears forever, but it can complicate your cash flow and benefit timing. So imagine someone retires from one job, starts another, files for Social Security, and assumes the checks will simply keep coming exactly as expected. Then the numbers change. Suddenly, they're confused. And that's when a retirement plan that looked simple becomes complicated. But there's one more thing my father discovered. Something so boring that most people never think about it. His Social Security statement. He had spent decades thinking about his paycheck. He had watched his 401k. He had worried about his mortgage. But he had barely looked at the actual record Social Security was using to calculate his future benefit. And that raises a question almost nobody asks early enough. What if the number you are planning your retirement around isn't the number you actually deserve? Because before you worry about claiming at 62, before you debate 67 versus 70, before you calculate how much you need in retirement, you may need to make sure the foundation itself is correct. And that's where one of the simplest checks can become surprisingly important. The first thing to do is understand your own record. Social Security provides workers with estimates based on their earnings history and claiming age. That means you don't have to guess blindly. You can look at the information Social Security has on you, and you should pay attention to the earnings history behind the estimate, because retirement planning is built on numbers. If the foundation is wrong, everything built on top of it becomes questionable. Then comes the second question: when should you claim? This is where people often search for a single magic answer: 62, 67, 70. But there isn't one age that automatically makes sense for every American. If you're healthy, have other retirement income, and can afford to wait, delaying may produce a larger monthly benefit. If you're struggling financially, have health concerns, or have other circumstances, claiming earlier could make sense. The important thing is understanding the trade-off before you file, and then look beyond yourself. If you're married, understand how your claiming decision interacts with your spouse's situation. If you're divorced, don't automatically assume your former spouse's Social Security record is irrelevant. If your spouse has died, understand survivor benefits. If you have dependent children or other qualifying family circumstances, investigate whether family benefits could apply. Social Security is bigger than one monthly check with your name on it. It's a system of benefits connected to work, family, disability, retirement, and survivors. And that is why the biggest mistake may not be claiming too early. It may be assuming there's nothing else to investigate. Think about my uncle again. He wasn't irresponsible. He wasn't trying to beat the system. He simply wanted to retire. But he looked at Social Security as a button. press it at 62. Money comes out, done. The reality is much more complicated. The decision can affect the size of your monthly benefit, your spouse, your future income, and potentially the financial security of your family. That's why thousands of dollars can sometimes be hiding inside decisions that look incredibly ordinary. A date, a form, an earnings record, a phone call, a conversation with your spouse, a review of your Social Security statement. None of these things feel dramatic. But retirement isn't usually destroyed by one dramatic moment. Sometimes it's shaped by dozens of small decisions that nobody thought were important. My grandfather didn't know every Social Security rule. My father didn't either, and my uncle certainly didn't. But the lesson isn't that you need to become a Social Security expert. It's much simpler. Don't assume, check. Don't automatically claim, compare. Don't look only at your own benefit. Look at your household. Don't wait until a crisis happens to learn about survivor benefits. Understand them before you need them. And don't treat the number on a Social Security estimate as the entire retirement plan. It's one piece. Because Social Security was never designed to be the only source of retirement income. Your savings matter. Your investments matter. Your expenses matter. Your health matters. And the age you claim matters. The goal isn't to squeeze every possible dollar out of the system at any cost. The goal is to make a decision that fits your life, because the money you leave behind isn't always sitting in some secret account. Sometimes it's hidden inside a decision you haven't made yet. And that's the part most people don't realize. My uncle thought his biggest retirement decision was whether he could afford to stop working. It turned out there was another question, whether he understood what he was giving up by starting Social Security when he did. So before you file, before you click submit, before you decide that 62, 67, or 70 is automatically the right answer, take a step back, look at your record, look at your family, look at your other income, understand the rules, and then make the decision, because retirement is too long and Social Security is too important. To leave thousands of dollars behind simply because you never knew to look for them. And if there's one thing I hope you remember, it's this. Your Social Security benefit isn't just a number, it's a decision. And the earlier you understand that decision, the more control you may have over the retirement you're building. Subscribe to MSBT Finance for more documentaries about the money decisions shaping America's future.